How do musicians memorize thousands of different chords? They don't. I've taught hundreds of students how to do so, and you can do it as well. It's much more creative and expressive since you're freeing yourself up to play whatever you want. So, let's dive in. If rhythm is the way we handle time, then melody and harmony are how we handle space. And as I said last video, melody is one note at a time, harmony is many notes at the same time. Now how do we get those notes to sound good together? And better yet, which feelings can we produce using harmony? First of all, we're going to learn about triads. These are chords that have 3 different notes. Just like a scale has a tonic, a chord has a root, and we number the root 1. A triad typically uses the 1, 3 and 5. Now in the major scale we have a major third and the perfect fifth. So when I notate it like this, I'm talking about the major third and the perfect fifth. I could notate this as well to mean a minor third, or this to mean a diminished fifth, or this to mean an augmented fifth. Now when I talk about these numbers, we're talking about a major triad, and we notate it by just notating the name of the root, in this case C. If we want to make a minor triad of it, we add a little m to it, and now we have a minor third, and everything else is the same. So this is the only difference between major and minor, it's the third. Both have a perfect fifth, which means that a major C chord has C, E, G, and a minor has C, E flat, G, right? So that just stays the same. Also, the distance from C to E is a major third, but from E to G is a minor third. Since the distance from 1 to 5 stays the same, we can check this out like this. Here we have a minor third, here we have a major third. Here we have a major third, here we have a minor third. So a fifth is a minor third plus a major third. Okay, that's one way to conceptualize it. But then what do you get if you stack 2 minor thirds on top of each other, or 2 major thirds? If you stack 2 major thirds on top of each other, you get an augmented fifth, and you would notate the symbol like this. This is an augmented chord. Whereas if we stack 2 minor thirds on top of each other, we get a diminished fifth, creating a diminished chord. These are the chord symbols for these chords. Diminished chords will come back much later in this playlist, and they will turn out to be very common actually. However, augmented chords aren't. One place you might know an augmented chord from is from what we call line cliches. It's when you take a chord and take one note from that chord and you just move it up a semitone. Na, 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 na. That's kind of a line cliche, although you would typically do it over one chord. And I just switched to a different chord and then back. Okay, you might know it from Mamma Mia. That's where we know the augmented chord from. Okay, another thing to keep in mind, you're gonna have to find your own words to describe what things sound like to you. Okay, now I'm going to give you an example using my words, but mine might not work for you, so pick your own. To me, the raised notes that are higher than expected feel different than the lowered notes that are lower than expected. This has a tension that to me is depressive. This has a tension that to me is aggressive. So if we're playing just major chords, I don't know, all kinds of major chords and minor chords, just all different sorts of minor chords. Now we're gonna play augmented chords, a bunch of different augmented chords. This is a very different sound from just major. Just nothing going on, major, minor, basic chords, but then suddenly you get augmented. That's a different kind of tension, right? And I call this aggressive if we compare it to the diminished chord, which is depressive. Alright, now let's finish the list with 2 more chords that replace the third by either the second or the fourth. And these are called sus chords, and you notate them as this C sus2 or C sus4. You sometimes see C sus2 or C sus4 where it's placed up high in the corner instead of low. Both happen, both occur. Do what suits best to you, but we all know what we're talking about the second we say sus2 or sus4. Now the sus4 chord originates from classical music, where the 4 has a strong tension wanting to resolve back down to 3. While sus2 didn't really get used in classical music that much. It doesn't have the same harmonic gravity, like it doesn't want to resolve quite as badly as the 4th does. Sus chords have a pretty typical sound. There's something open about them, something modern and light, and again you should find your own words that describe what it feels like to you, because it might not be the same to you as it is to me. However, a sus4 chord wants to resolve back down to major, so that's the na. And it doesn't feel the same to do this note, doesn't want to go back up quite as badly. I mean, it sounds good when it does go up, don't get me wrong, but when you're here, it doesn't have the same gravity, the same pull towards the 3rd. Even better yet, it might want to go back down to the 1. Sounds even more resolved. So the tensions are different. You're going to need to calculate these chords, play them and get used to them, get used to what they sound like. You cannot confuse major and minor with each other. You could confuse, especially if you're just starting out, confusing a sus2 chord with a sus4 chord, confusing diminished with augmented. Like when you're just starting out, they both just sound very dissonant. Which is why I'm telling you the augmented one sounds more like an aggressive dissonance and the diminished one sounds more like a depressive dissonance, at least to me. Find your own words. But eventually you want to be able to differentiate between all 6 of these chord types. These are all the triads you would commonly find. Theoretically speaking, you could pick any 3 notes that are different, give them a name and call it a triad. That's a thing, you could do it. It almost never happens, at least in pop music, it almost never happens. We almost always see these 6 chords. Usually even just these 2 chords, although these are pretty common as well. These used to be more common, but they've gotten less common. Now we will focus on major, minor and sus chords first, because those are just the most common chord types. And now that you know which triads exist, you might wonder how to use them. This is why you had to learn the major scale. It's time to connect some dots. Okay, so here we have the C major scale. Now typically, if we want to know which chord goes with this scale, we would take the tonic as the root of our chord and we would get 1, 3, 5. And we could say, well, the first chord, indicated by a Roman numeral, is apparently a major chord because it has a major 3rd and a perfect 5th. However, each note in this scale can be a root to a chord, which means we move this up there. That's all we do. Now D is the root. Do we have a major chord or a minor chord? Calculate it for yourself for a second, pause the video. And we can see that D to F is a minor 3rd and F to A is a major 3rd, so D to A is a perfect 5th. Minor 3rd, perfect 5th. That means we have C major and D minor. If we use these Roman numerals, this numbering system, typically we would use the small letter I on your keyboard to create the number for the second chord. We're gonna keep going. Now the E chord, 1, 3, 5. Which kind of chord is this? Pause the video and if you know how to do it already, do all 7. And we will get back to it in 3, 2, 1. Alright, E, G, B, that's a minor 3rd and a perfect 5th. That's E minor, so the 3rd is notated like that. F, A, C, that's just an F major, nothing weird going on there. G, that's G major, nothing weird going on there. A to C is a minor 3rd, C to E is a major 3rd, so that's just your basic minor chord, that's our 6th. The B chord is different. B to D is a minor third, and D to F is also a minor third. So B has a diminished fifth. Minor third and diminished fifth, that makes a B diminished chord. And if you're going to notate the number, you could do this. I like adding the diminished sign to it, just to make sure we're not talking about a minor chord, but about a diminished one. These are the 7 chords that fit into your major scale. This is what you have to work with if you stick to one key. And for now, we will definitely stick to one key. Let's just get used to these things first. Let's immediately practice this for a second. I'm going to name a key and I'm going to name a chord. I'm going to ask you to find out which chord we have at this spot and this key. I'll make it clear. Write this down on a piece of paper and answer it. In the key of G, what's the third chord? What's the chord symbol for this chord? If B flat is the 4 chord, which key are we in? In the key of D, we got C sharp diminished. What's the right chord? Which kind of chord is it? What's the numbering when we attach to that? In the key of A flat, we want 2 chords. Which are these? And in the key of A, we got a chord. What's the right number to attach to that? Answers in 3, 2, 1. This is B minor, G, A, B. B is the third chord. We already know it's a minor chord because we have the smaller case I's. If B flat is your 4, then A, G, F. That's 4, B flat, 3 is A, 2 is G, and 1 is F. We're in the key of F. If C sharp diminished, well, I mean, it's a diminished chord, so it's got to be 7, right? And you'll see if you go down a half step from D, you end on C sharp as well. So yes, this is indeed the 7 chord. A flat, 2, is a whole tone up from A flat. This is why I had to know 1 1/2 and 1/2. It's a whole tone up. That's all you need to do. You already know it's B flat. Just by going up a semitone, to a whole tone. The 5 chord, well, A flat is A flat, C, E flat. It's E flat. I'll get back to what I just did there. And E, that's the 6th chord in the key of E. One really convenient thing to just learn is all the major triads. If I say F sharp, you say F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. If I say B, you see B, D sharp, F sharp. If I say E flat, you say E flat, G, B flat. Just know all those major triads by heart. Make little cards, put the chord symbol on one side, the note content on the other side, and just study all of them. That's at least one way you could do it. You don't need to do it that way. But knowing these will be incredibly useful for your calculation skills. So I urge you to study that. We'll get back to this in a second. Now let's take a look at this chord progression. This chord progression is made famous by a comedy band called the Axis of Awesome. They came up with this chord, well, they didn't come up with this chord progression, but this chord progression is used in so many different songs, and they made this massive compilation mashup medley of like more than 60 songs, all containing these chords or parts of this chord progression, and they sang all these songs over them. I'll share the link so you can check it out. Anyway, if you remember your chords based on the numbers, then you can learn to just know them in every key. So calculate for yourself what these chords are in the keys of A and E flat. I'll be back in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so these are the answers, and you'll notice they will sound pretty much the same in each key. So for example, here we got no woman, no cry. In the other key, no, wow. No woman, no cry. It's still the same chord progression. So what is it we're actually experiencing when I'm playing these chords? We don't experience E flat or F sharp minor or C minor. That's not exactly that's not a good representation of how we experience those sounds. Okay, now you go and play these chords on your own instrument. Take your time, go step by step, learn how to get these chords. First do the one, then do the other, see if you can go back and forth. It's all fine, just take your time, but play these chords and keep playing chords until playing chords becomes natural to you. Also, sing the root while you're playing the chords. Okay, so I'll give you an example. This is the bass note is generally the root. We'll get back to those nuances next lesson. So na doesn't have to be do, it can be it doesn't matter which octave, it's fine. Or but that's singing the right, you're singing the roots of the chords you're playing. The reason you sing the roots is because the roots have a certain type of sound. They sound like the root. And the more you get this sound in your head, the better for you. Because at some point, the root and the bass note will not be the same thing. And we will have to be able to distinguish which note actually is in the bass and what the root is. And you're going to have to be able to sing that root, even though the root is not the bass note. So we're just going to start here by singing the root while root and bass are still the same note. You're just exposing your ears to the sounds of roots. That's all it is. Alright, one more thing and we can get started on those exercises. Now the system of music theory that you're learning is called functional harmony. Now, why is it called functional harmony? Well, this is because chords have functions, and there are 3 functions we typically think of. The first one is the tonic. So this relates to the first chord, to the 1 chord, and this feels most like home. This is the chord where there's the least amount of tension. It sounds most resolved and therefore it doesn't sound like we want to go somewhere. We're just fine where we are. The second one to learn is the dominant. Here we typically think of the 5 chord. And the dominant sounds like it wants to go home. So these 2 types of tension tend to go back and forth. We're either home or we're at the place where we want to go home. And this was the very first type of movement we came up with back in classical music days. We came up with the 5-1 progression. And this was a very typical one, but it was not the only type of tension. We also have subdominant. Now the subdominant typically relates to the 4 chord and sounds away from home. It does not sound like it wants to go home, but it does sound like it's away from home. Okay? Okay, when we start practicing, I'm gonna start with a song that helps us feel the tonic, the dominant and the subdominant, but no, when your ears are still untrained, you're just gonna need some time to get used to what this all sounds like and to recognize these tensions. It's gonna take some time and it's fine. However, we only gave functions to 3 of the 7 chords that we have in a key. Let's remedy that. Now, first thing you need to know is what a mediant is. A mediant is a chord whose root is a third removed from the chord we're investigating. A third. And because of that, the 2 chords that we're comparing with each other, the chord we start with and its mediant, they share notes. So let's see how this works. If we take C, we have the note C, E, G. Okay, let's go up a third. Let's go to the 3 chord, which is E minor and contains the notes E, G, B. They share a lot of notes, right? We can go back a third as well, landing us on A, which contains the notes A, C, E. And again, they share a lot of notes. These are medians. Medians are chords which share notes and because of that, in part, share functions as well. So let's see what we get when we apply this. The dominant is also the 7 chord. The 7 chord has so much dissonance that it just really wants to resolve, and because of that it works really well to go from the 7 chord back to 1. The subdominant that's most commonly used aside from the 4 chord is the 2 chord. Especially in jazz we have a ton of 2-5-1s, we'll get to that in a few lessons. These are clear and simple because you have no alternative. All the other chords actually have 2 different tensions they could have depending on context. Now the 6 chord can sound kind of like a tonic, although the 6 chord can also sound kind of like a subdominant. I personally am of the opinion that it sounds more like a tonic than like a subdominant, but it is dependent on context. Now the 3 chord is the weirdest one of them all, because the 3 chord sits right in between the tonic and the dominant. It sits right in between home and wants to go home. And so it kind of sounds like home and it kind of sounds like it wants to go home. That doesn't quite work. So in my experience, it does not sound like a tonic at all. And it does not really sound like a dominant that much either. 3 mostly sounds like it wants to go to a subdominant. So technically speaking, based on this bit of theory, we could say the third is either a tonic or a dominant. I personally disagree. I'd say 3 wants to go to the subdominant. It sounds really good when you're writing a song, playing a song, you're on the 3rd chord and you're wondering where does this chord wants to go? It just sounds really good to go either to the 2 chord or the 4 chord. It works wonders. Okay, so you've learned a lot. Again, you now know which triads exist, where we can find those triads in the major key and how we can create all those chords, and we can calculate how it all fits together. And then you learn that the 7 chords that fit into a major key have their functions and that they have a certain tension corresponding to that function. And this is going to help you a ton when you're writing songs. Okay, now as you're listening to chords or as you're playing chords or figuring chords out, always make yourself conscious of the numbering that's going on. Am I going from the 1 chord to the 4? Am I going from the 2 chord to the 5? Like, which kind of movement am I making here? From where to where? What are these chords? It's very important because the 2 chord will sound like the 2 chord in every key. Just like the 3 chord will sound like the 3 chord in every key, and that goes for all 7 of them. So at some point you're just gonna listen to a song that you hear on Spotify, on the car radio or whatever, and you're just gonna hear, it goes from 4 to 3 to 5 to 1 or whatever the chord sequence may be, but you can just identify that and then you can come home, check out which key we're in, apply your knowledge to the key and just play the chords. And this is how you get to a point where you can play a song just by listening to it. Okay, I'm going to use the chords of Sweet Caroline to help you feel the tonic, the subdominant and the dominant. First, I'm just going to play the chords. I want you to just listen to them for a second. Next, I want you to try and sing the roots. I'm going to play it twice. First time I'm not singing the roots, the second time I'm singing the roots. Okay, now if you've practiced number singing and you were now practicing root singing, you can combine those to figure out which chords we're playing. So, na, 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 this is 1. Okay, it's up to you to figure out what the other 2 are. Sing it, count it, I'll give you a few seconds. 3, 2, 1. Na, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 5, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay, I didn't say it literally, so maybe you didn't spot it yet, but I played 4, 4, 5, 1. So these are the chords. Now 1 is going to feel like the tonic. It's going to feel like home. But you notice, you can feel that. If I'm just going to go to the chords quickly. That feels like an ending, like a relief, a sigh of relief. We wouldn't get that if I ended in a place like this one. Doesn't feel like an ending. Something needs to happen here. It wants to go somewhere. It wants to go back to 1. There we are. So that's tonic and that's dominant. Dominant wants to go back. Whereas once we go to the subdominant, okay, now what does this feel like? It doesn't really feel like it has to go somewhere, but it's not home. We're not home now. Because home is... But the relief is not quite as big as it was when we came from this one. That's a bigger relief, right? Okay, maybe you're not feeling this just yet, but just make sure whenever you're figuring out harmony by ear, or whenever you're playing chords yourself, you're composing or improvising using chords, make sure you're conscious of the numbers of those chords. This is the best way to train yourself to identify what those things sound like. Because the 2 chord will always sound like the 2 chord, the 4 chord will always sound like the 4 chord, no matter which key you're in, no matter which instrument you're using, whether you're listening to an orchestra or whether you're just singing the notes of the chords, which is also a thing you could do, it's always going to sound like these numbers. And one more exercise. Now you're going to try and combine number singing and root singing to figure out the chords I'm going to play for you right now. I'll play them once first and then I'll tell you a little something about them. So first have a listen. I'm not going to go further than that just yet. Here we've got Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and it goes like this. And it goes like this: the 4th, the 5th, the minor fall and major lift, the baffled king. Okay, that part. Now listen to the chorus again, try root singing, try singing along. I'm going to play the whole thing twice, and after that I'm going to play it a 3rd time singing the roots. So here we go. Second time. Okay, here we go. So what do we got? Na, na. That's 4, 5, 6, 4, 5. And one funny thing here is we've got, well, it goes like this: the 4th, the 5th, the minor fall, where we get the minor chord, and the major lift, where we get, you could say the subdominant, the 4 chord is a bit uplifting, but that's very subjective. So he's kind of referencing the music in his lyrics. Well, congrats! This is your first step in figuring out harmony by ear. Keep in mind that this playlist is going to progress to much more advanced harmony, so subscribe if you don't want to miss out. First assignment, I notate some chords and it's time to practice your reading. Which chords did I notate? Which key are we in? And what are the numbers of these chords? Take your time and figure it out. Okay, second assignment, I'm playing some chords, you figure them out by ear. Here we go. Alright, see if you can find the chords and we'll get back to it in a couple minutes. Third assignment, just play a bunch of chords. However, play those chords in a bunch of different keys. Don't just stick to one key. While you're playing those chords, sing the roots. And while you're singing the roots, the sound you're producing with your mouth is the number you're on. So you don't sing ah, 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 ah. You sing 1, 2, 5, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is all just training for your brain and for your ears. So just be conscious of all those things and to pick up those sounds while you're producing music. Fourth assignment, you already made rhythmic and melodic compositions. And now I want you to add harmony to them. Just play around, be playful and explore. We'll get more into the intricacies of how melody and harmony work together, but we'll do that in later lessons. For now, just try something out and see what it sounds like to you and find out which stuff doesn't work and which stuff does work for you. Form your own opinion and just play along. But be conscious of what you're playing and write it down and try it in different keys. That's all important. Last assignment, do the same thing as assignment 4, but this time don't take your rhythmic or melodic compositions and add chords to them, but see if you can come up with chords and melody together. Ideally, improvising a melody while improvising chords. So just C, 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 la na 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 na, F, la na 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 na. I know it seems silly, but this is all fine-tuning your radar for melodic tension, for harmonic tension, for how melody and harmony fits together, and for just playfully creating something for yourself, just for you. And it's great training for your brain and ears. Okay, that's all the assignments. Time to get to the answers. Okay, these are A flat, E flat, B flat, and C minor. In any key, having two major chords right next to each other only happens on the 4 and 5, which means this must be 1 and this is 6. We're in the key of E flat. And so the chords are 4, 1, 5, 6. Alright, in case you don't know the song or didn't pick it up already, the song whose chords you were figuring out was Summer of '69. So Summer of '69 is about the summer of love, 1969, with hippie movement, a lot of stuff. It was a great summer, apparently, because I'm definitely not old enough to know what it was like. Anyway, the chords we had were 1, go into 5, 5, and back to 1, and back to 5, and then came the chorus, move into 6, 5, 1, 4, 6, 5. Now it might be interesting to you to know that the opening riff is a sus2 chord, going to major, going to sus4, going to major. And that sounds like we're using a bunch of different chords, but that's not really what it is. We're just doing with one note, while the other two notes stay the same. So it's just one move, so it's just one note moving up and down. Oh, and instead of playing all the notes at the same time, we're playing them as an arpeggio. Arpeggio meaning a broken chord, playing one note at the time. So the intro riff is dancing around the third of the chord, which is a critical note to determine the chord quality, whether it's major or minor or whatever it is. It's a very colorful note. It has more tension and more color than the root or the fifth. So in a way, it's about as interesting as you can make a riff based on the major triad. Now, of course, I can check your compositions or your improvisations in this video. I urge you to share this stuff in the comments. I'll give you feedback. Other people can give you feedback, give each other feedback, and take a friend along in the process and give each other compositions and give each other notations to play each other's compositions and give each other feedback. It's a much better learning process. It's better for you individually because you will just learn more. It's better for the two of you together, and it gets you moving to have an appointment with someone else to know, well, in 2 days we're going to check each other's compositions and need to come up with something, you know? So that's good for your learning process. Okay, just a quick recap. We were talking about harmony, which basically means chords. And in this case, we're talking about triads, which have 3 notes. There's major, minor, augmented, diminished, sus2, and sus4. The sus stands for suspense or suspended because the note leaves you in suspense. It has a certain tension that wants to resolve. That's what it's referring to. You also learned the chord numbering system, giving different kinds of symbols to different chords. And you learned that there are functions, which are the tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant. Dominant being 5, subdominant being 4, tonic being 1. Tonic feels like home, that's away from home, and that wants to go home. And remember, and you need to remember number singing and relate it to root singing. Alright, This was a very big step in our understanding of music in general and harmony specifically. We're not done with triads just yet. We're going to dive deeper into triads next week, and we're going to apply them a bit more to songs and songwriting as well. Because we want to know more about how they work and what to actually do with them and how they work together with melody and all sorts of things we can know about triads. But that's for next week. You dive into the assignments, keep composing, keep improvising, keep practicing chords and scales and everything you're teaching. Practice all that stuff on your instrument and go make some music. See you next week.